All right. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the PlantFueled Femme. Today we have Kyira Wackett with us. Kyira is a licensed mental health therapist, and we are going to be diving into some of the shame and why there are feelings of shame surrounding women and all the things we do, and especially surrounding our bodies. So, welcome, Kyira. I am very, very excited for our conversation today. Thank you for making time to join us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm equally excited and interested to see where we go because I think there's so many places and spaces like we were talking about that we could hit on. And
Oh,
so,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
I'm looking
absolutely.
forward to it.
Absolutely. So I am curious, how did you get into this particular space of helping women work through shame?
Yeah. I mean, I think like a lot of us that get into this field, we've had our own journeys. Typically, I think that awareness from our personal journey, perspective, whatever, really leads us into something. I also think as somebody who really wants to understand and synthesize. We talk about bodies, we talk about emotions, we talk about the mind, but we often sort of miss the mark on the overlap and the connection. I was really curious about that. And so, really understanding, I think, as a trauma survivor, as somebody who struggled with an eating disorder, I know everybody uses this term recovering people pleaser, but that's also like you're going to be recovering your whole life. As someone will say, with a tendency to feel like my job is to take care of everybody else with a really high shame story. I've done so much work and I've found where there are gaps in what we are and aren't talking about. And then also, when I got into my work and as a therapist, I specialized in eating disorders specifically. And I
Mhm.
saw that often what we are doing in addictions, but really mental and emotional health in general, is we're treating the symptoms, not the underlying issue. And so we'd see a lot of people coming through the door and it's like, well, what we could get you to stop restricting or binging or purging in like a week or two. That's not the issue. The issue is the underlying shame that is building and bubbling that leads to these behaviors that are an escape from or an escape to something. And we need to figure
Mhm.
out what's happening under there. And so I think kind of concurrent with my healing, recognizing that and that integration piece and really wanting to try to fill the gap in what is and isn't being talked about in this field.
Right. No, I think you're 100% right. Like everyone brings their own unique experience, and we've chosen this because something in our journey and in our healing process has resonated so much. We're like, we have to share this with
Yeah.
other women because we know they're struggling. Like we know our friends are struggling, we know our family are struggling, and if we
Mhm.
can do some, and if they are, then what about the whole rest of the world? And if
Yes.
we can even help one person, with our story and with the education that we've, well, essentially provided ourselves along our journey,
Yeah.
then everything is worth
Yeah, and realizing I think too that a lot of my awareness about kind of hitting the wall and
it.
what healing really was never meant to be, but what it was sort of painted as a picture like for me was really rooted in our cultural shame and the idea of toxic productivity and needing to
Mhm.
fix things and be better. And so I think recognizing that the system that we're trying to heal in is not designed for us to heal, and then really
Right.
trying to invite those different conversations. And we're seeing it now with GLP-1s and all these other things where again, there's a beauty and a space and a place for all of these things, but we're missing the mark because our culture is so much of, well, just lose the weight, stop the
Mhm.
behaviors, do this, make these changes to get this health, quote unquote, life, and then things will be fine, instead of going, where is this messaging really rooted to and what are they
Mhm.
playing into and what are we not healing and addressing if we're just sort of doing these things on the surface.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, because the surface level work will always rebound if you don't
Mhm.
address the root cause. And you were talking about the eating problems, like we're
Yeah.
overeating, we're under eating, we're so restricted, with orthorexia, so many eating disorders, but they are a coping tool. They are not the
Yeah.
problem. They're a coping tool. And
Right.
somehow of around, who knows how we picked up those behaviors. They could have been modeled. It could have, you simply could have come up with it on your own, but it is a way for you to cope with another situation.
Yeah. Yeah. And seeing, I think for so many of us too, I think we oversimplify that even of,
Oh yeah.
again, for many people, it's like, well, this is a disease of vanity, or this is a disease for this, or this is a lack of control or over control with food. And really, I have yet to have a client that I worked with in the therapy room, and I worked at partial hospitalization levels, intensive outpatient, a variety of different places, now training other therapists and doing more speaking and coaching work for people. I have yet to meet a person where the root issue was actually their body, where the
Oh
root
yeah,
issue
no.
was, I'm too fat or I'm not this. People have those thoughts. They're
Mhm.
there. They
Oh yeah.
definitely fuel it, but the underbelly of all of it really had nothing to do with that. It was never, I just want to be skinny, or I just want to be this, or I have no control of food. It was, I am unworthy.
Mhm.
I'm broken. I'm fucked up. I'm whatever the story is. And my body or my relationship with food and fitness and health is just another example of how I can't perform and I'm never going to be good enough in the room.
Yes. Yes, no, it's absolutely rooted in shame or in trauma or both.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, many people really struggle because I think shame has kind of gotten talked about, all across the board. We've heard it. I think Wes Brene Brown got more of a household term. People became aware of what it is, but I think
Mhm.
there's still confusion for many people because shame is ultimately this omnipresent fear that you are not worthy of love, connection, and belonging. And so it just sits there in your brain. And so if anybody's ever seen Inside Out, I think about that fear character
Mhm.
that just panics. Its job is to keep you safe. And so your shame was birthed from some experiences, stories, beliefs, roots that said this is what safety looks like, is to become hyper vigilant, to learn
Mhm.
how to perform, to meet all of these expectations, real or perceived, of the world around you in order to be whatever it is, worthy, lovable, have connection, belonging. And if we go even under that, we look at these kind of root systems or core beliefs around, okay, I'm not worthy unless, I'm only good enough if. And for many of us, again,
Mhm.
bodies was one part of it, but it was grades, it was gender, not just gender identity, gender presentation, the way that we are fitting in socioeconomic status, racial and ethnic backgrounds, religion. It was all of these big pieces. And then coupled with these smaller things. How did your friend group talk to you? How were you sort of hierarchically organized in the schools that you went to? What did teachers say to you? What were all those subliminal messages? All of that forms your core belief. And so
Mhm.
if your core belief is, I, Kyira, am garbage, I'm trash, no one could possibly love me, shame comes in going, but we need connection and belonging. So I'll help you. I'll give you a roadmap for what you can do to then have this thing that you need, to be loved, to have connection, to have belonging. And when you're desperate, how could you expect you would turn to anything other than listening to this voice that just tells you to perform? Because again, you have this desperate need and you see no other option because your rootest, deepest piece about you is, I am broken. I am the problem. So I need to do and be X to not be seen as a problem, even though I will always know that I am.
Right. No, that's so true. And it is so deep and it's so complex. I think that sometimes, at least in my field, you're in, a slightly different field. It is so hard to get women to dig down to those core beliefs, to the core,
Hmm.
why are we struggling with, every time you make some great progress, why do you annihilate that by self-sabotage? And
Yeah.
I know it goes back, but it is so hard for them to connect those dots.
Yeah. And what do you see? I'm curious because you're right. I think we have so much overlap in the people that we are seeing and working with, but we come
Hmm.
from such different lenses. What do
Right,
you see as being the biggest fear with your clients where they don't want to go there? What stops them?
right. I think it is the fear of getting really honest, because if they're not honest, they can continue to blame the program and then they can program hop and nothing is ever going to deliver
Mm,
the right results because they aren't taking accountability for their trauma, for the reason that they behave in the way that
right.
they behave. And that's not something I'm licensed or certified or credited to be able to help with at all.
Right.
We can work on behavior modification, we can, work on lists, on journaling, but there is not I a lot that I can offer in that particular
Yeah.
department.
Well, and I think even to your point then is there is this, and I think people get really, I don't know, I'm just imagining like feathers ruffled when we talk
Yes.
about radical responsibility
Oh
and
yeah.
owning your story. And the key message is we're not saying you're responsible for your trauma. We're saying
Right.
you
No.
have a responsibility, thereby freedom and empowerment to decide how you're going to continue to allow that trauma story to show up in your life. And so that piece, I
Right.
think, is often ill defined. And so we're not blaming you that these things happened. In fact, we're
No.
validating no shit, you developed these beliefs and patterns. If that
Right.
was what you experienced, how could you have expected to do anything different? And boy, are we still giving that person or those persons and people and places and whatever it is a lot of power to
Hmm.
constantly say that I have no power in making a change now. And then I think you're right. It translates to I've never found the right therapist. It wasn't the right
Hmm.
program. I've tried
Right.
all different diets. Well, again, none of those are going to work because we're still saying that the power lies on someone else. And if that's the case, if you're still outsourcing your roots, you're never going to feel whole. And even if you get your goal weight, even if you drop weight or you change weight or you develop a healthier relationship with food, the target's going to move. And
Right.
that's where then it becomes the program hopping or the disordered eating and the orthorexia and all of that because you're still chasing some sort of external point to feel secure in yourself.
Right. No, that is so true. Wow, my brain like went off in so many different directions right now, Kira. Um, but it is so true, and it seems to be so challenging for women to accept that responsibility. Like we only work with women, so I'm not just picking on
Yeah,
women.
yeah.
I'm sure that men have the same issues, but it is so challenging for us to accept that responsibility. And I think part of it lies in that, when we do encourage to, hey, you are in control. Just because your life is falling apart does not mean that you have to go eat XYZ things. Like you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
But it's perceived like it's something that we're asking that is too hard. It's challenging them, and then there's defensiveness, like I just can't do this right now, when really that's not true, because if we could be responsible for what is going on deeper and internally, like
Hmm.
you said, it gives you so much power.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
and I think sometimes the hard conversation I have with people is you're right. If we look at the way you're living your life right now, you don't have the time and space to do this.
Hmm.
And if we draw a control wheel and we talk radical acceptance, so controlling what's in my control and letting go
Yes.
of what isn't, how much time are you giving? How much energy are you investing in things that are actually not in your control? So then you're coming here saying, "Oh, I don't have time for this. I can't do this." When actually you do have the time and the capacity, and this one's actually in your control. But that's scary because if you
Hmm.
keep fixating and
Yes.
focusing on everyone else and being everything for everyone else, again, that's protective. That's adaptive.
Hmm.
You are busy, but it's a lot of busy work on things you actually have no control over. You've written yourself in as the primary character in everybody else's story and made yourself a background character in your own. And so you're right. If you let those things go, people probably are going to get pissed because they're used to you spending all of your time taking care of them. Balls are going to drop. Those balls were never yours to pick up in the first place. But constantly giving that power to all those other sources and then claiming you don't have the power to change your own pieces, that's a convenience tool that shame uses to keep you fixated on controlling what you can't control.
Right. No, absolutely. I love the circle of control. Can you take a moment
Yeah.
to describe a little bit more in detail what the circle of control is?
Yeah. So I think people use different terms. I often
Yeah.
talk about it as a control wheel. And so one of the
Yep.
things that I think about is our brain does really, really well when it can see things broken down in simple processes. So even though we're really high functioning, we have great capability, we need things to be really simple, really concrete. So what we do is we either think about a specific situation or our lives in general, and you can get a blank sheet of paper. You can find, I've made a handout with this. I'm sure
Mhm.
lots of other people have made handouts that can help with this. But basically, you're just drawing a circle on a piece of paper. Inside of the circle is everything you can control. Outside of the circle is everything that you can't. The biggest pieces that we're looking at here is everybody else's shit, our shit, and our reactions to their shit. That's what it is. We are in control of what we do, what we say, the boundaries that we set. We cannot control how other people react to those things. That's theirs. What they think, feel, want, need, all that, that's theirs. But then how we respond to what they do, that's also in our control. And so, what you notice as you use a control wheel is there's kind of a bouncing back and forth. You can control something, and then ultimately, it's kind of like you've thrown the ball to someone else. They're now in control. Whatever they do, you don't have the capacity to micromanage, control, shift, no matter how much you've convinced yourself you can. A great example, because I know many people that are listening are moms or have
Mhm.
been around moms. You can do everything in your power to set your kid up to have the best possible day, to be mentally and emotionally clear, to fuel their bodies, have the rest time. Sometimes they're just going to have a tantrum.
Mhm.
And that doesn't mean that you did anything wrong. That means that their brain and body is going through their own things. You can't control away their humanity. Your reaction to their tantrum is yours. The
Mhm.
decision to berate yourself and then end up binging at the end of the night after they've gone to bed because you're telling yourself you're a shitty mom and this is one more thing that shouldn't have happened. You're giving in and not setting boundaries with them and thereby reinforcing you can't set boundaries with anyone. That's in your control. And so, if we can
Mhm.
write it down and start to see it visually, our brain can start to sort those things out and recognize, oh, this is actually not in my control. It doesn't mean immediately you're
Mhm.
going to be like, I won't pick that ball up anymore. You're still going to pick the ball up, but you're
Okay.
going to start to develop some awareness and language around that wasn't mine. And sometimes, what I'll do in a coaching session, or particularly when we're thinking about deeper dive therapy, is why did we pick that ball up in the first place? Where did we get the message that it was our responsibility to pick that up? And typically, what we see under that is conditional love and acceptance when we were kids. We
Mhm.
have to be something for everybody else to be loved. And then you go, oh, when that happened, I took that ball and I put it inside the circle.
Mhm.
Now, if we go back to what you're talking about, which is that radical responsibility of what we're
Yeah.
doing now, that ball was put inside my circle. I didn't know any better. I was 4, I was 5, I was 12.
Mhm.
That's what I had to do to survive. Me now at 38, 52, 68, I can put that ball back outside of the circle.
Yes. I love that. That is such a powerful description of the circle of control. I love it. Um, and I do want to add for anyone that's listening, if you are struggling with making a circle of control, I have a handout. I would be happy to send you. I think Kyira said you have one too that you would be happy to send people.
Yeah.
It's something that would give you a visual. Like I am a super concrete person. When we remodeled our house, I had to have my husband draw everything out in like 3D because I couldn't get it. I'm like, what do you
Yeah.
mean there's going to be a wall there? Like I need to see it.
Yes.
So I know how for me to have something to reference is a tool that's very helpful. But no, I love that. And yes, you're right. We do because this is something I practiced for a long time too. But we do have things in our wheel or in our circle that we don't that aren't ours. And just
Mm-hmm.
because we decide that we're going to start practicing the wheel of control doesn't mean that we're going to be perfect at setting those things out. And this is the same with your exercise and with your nutrition and with any other thing that you are doing to improve yourself. It's not going to be perfect, but that does not make you a failure. You just get
Mm-hmm.
up and you keep practicing it because all good things, your whole life is accumulation of your habits. And what you're trying to do when you're trying to improve yourself is change your habits and your beliefs. And that takes time and that takes practice.
Mm-hmm. And I think, that notion for so many of us too, I was just writing something about the productivity sort of bubble that we exist in
Mm,
and sort of that toxic productivity piece. And I think a lot of it has to do with we've designed our life systems where we don't have any capacity to absorb chaos or change.
mhm,
So when something happens, like I have a 5.5-year-old, when something happens where she's supposed to go to camp and now she's sick and she can't go, well, I don't have any flexibility in my day. I can't cancel all the things. I can't do this stuff. I'm going to miss the gym and then I'm going to do this. And now she's home. I don't have time to run this errand and I was going to meal prep this thing. And so now, you know what? Fuck it. We're just getting takeout. And then you start this circle of, well, I got nothing done. I
Mm,
can't sleep tonight because I got to stay up and catch up on all these things. We didn't eat right. And you sort of throw away your goals out the window out of something that you could never control to begin with because you've designed your system to be inflexible. And so I
mhm,
think a lot of the times for us when we think about our goals and again this relationship with control is you can also control how much of your energy and your time you fill and you give in any given moment or day. And
mhm,
so when I used to run programs at partial hospitalization clinics, you could have I worked with teens. And so you could have maybe 2 kids in your room, or you could have up to 10 kids in your room. And
wow.
if we have an hour check in for, let's say, weekend planning and when they're going to go home for the weekend and how they're going to manage, they've got a lot of triggers. They're going to be eating meals with their families or other caregivers that maybe don't do things the same way that we do. That can be stressful. Well, what I would often do is when there was maybe only 2 or 3 people, I'd give each one of them 30 minutes,
Mm,
20 minutes to be able to talk about and process their weekend. Imagine what would happen to them when suddenly there's 8 kids in the room and they only
mhm,
get 5 to 7 minutes. Now they're anxious. They need more time. They have to have all this. And now they didn't get the time that they need. They're resenting me. They're stressed out. There's no way that they could be successful. And I had a supervisor that said, you need to design your program the same way that they need to learn to design their life, where there doesn't always have to be an hour. So we fill it. Take the 30 minutes when you've only got 2 of them. Maybe, yeah, maybe they get 15 minutes instead of the
mhm,
10 when the class is bigger. Maybe you have them do things in small groups instead of always getting one on one attention with you. The
mhm,
goal is to recognize that just because it's there, we don't have to fill it. And also, how do we empower them to know that they're capable and competent even when the schedule looks different? And I feel like that has been one of the most palpable real life examples that I've put into my own life and in everything I do with clients is we've got to design an 80% system, not 100. And there has to be flexibility or else your shame is just going to be waiting in the lurch because the risk is
mhm,
too high. And everything you don't do right, you put it up and now you're vigilant of all the threats that could happen instead of going, oh, that's in the 20%. That's normal. That's
mhm.
expected. We planned for that. We don't need to react now.
Right. No, I love that because and it kind of goes along with something that we practice of you can't be 100% all the time. Like you
Right.
can't. That is setting yourself up for failure. And with a lot of the women that we work with, they are program hopping. And when you can't invest 100% into a program, you just find another one. And that way,
Mhm.
you can avoid that feeling of shame that you have because you couldn't invest 100%. So yes, I don't care if you're doing it perfect, but
Right.
be flexible, be consistent, show up for yourself in some capacity. And
Mhm.
maybe it's not at 100%, and that is still okay.
Yes. Yes. And recognizing, I think that for many of us, that 100% in our ideal setting is not what's actually being translated into everyday life, anyways. And I
Oh,
think,
no.
again, it's an avoidance strategy. It's like,
Right.
when you're talking about program hopping, it's, well,
Yes.
of course you're not going to be able to give 100% all the time. This isn't the one thing that you're doing in your life. You're incorporating this work into everything else. And some weeks you're going to have a couple hours, some weeks you've got 20
Mhm.
minutes. But that's what real life looks like. And so if you're sort of
Mhm.
waiting on, I have this immersive program that I designed really about 6 months into COVID. So my daughter was born. COVID happened 2 weeks later.
Oh
I
my
went
gosh.
back to seeing clients like a month after she was born because of everything moving virtual. So I
Right.
was like, okay, I now don't have any social interaction in this world except taking my daughter on walks around the block and staying as far away from anybody in the world as possible.
Right.
And my husband is an emergency medicine physician. And so he
Mhm.
was in the thick of it. And
Right.
so even us, like we had this separation to keep our daughter safe. And I was like, all right, I need to get back on and do some client work because it's guaranteed connection.
Mhm.
Even if I'm taking care of everybody else, I'm at least having a deeper, meaningful connection with people. And thankfully, my mother in law was here. She was in our bubble. She could be with my daughter. But I was going in these sessions and meeting with all of these people. 6 months into COVID, our wait list was like 175 people long at the clinic that I was working at. It was some crazy number, over
Wow.
150 people. And I'm like, well, what is worse? being told that we're full and we don't have a wait list, or being told that you're number 176. I think it's probably being told you're 176. We ended up kind of taking our wait list off. I was like, I guarantee you at least half of those people don't actually need therapy. They need support, but I don't
Right.
know that they're all at that acuity level anyways. So long story short, I ended up making this really immersive. It's meant to take about 9 months, self-paced program that walks people through everything that I do on sort of a general shame resilience capacity. This deeper work with modules, handouts, all of this stuff. I'm like, this is better than what you get in the therapy room
Mhm.
in many ways, because you're not getting in your own way by coming in just like crisis of the week and we have to redirect and kind of avoidance and all of these pieces. You're getting to have this content. You can fit it in at your timeline, all this. Still to this day, so we're 5 years into having this program, or just about 5 years into having this program, the number of people that will sit on a wait list to do coaching with me versus invest in that program is crazy. The
Mhm.
program is better. The value is better. You can even pay to get coaching with the program. You get videos that I made and handouts, and it's lifetime accessible. It's better than what I can do in the room with you every 2 to 3 weeks when I can get you on my schedule. But it's the idea of, then I'm responsible. I
Mhm.
have to do it. I have to fit it in. I can't do that because
Right.
I will never be accountable to that. I can't take that on. I'm too busy. Instead of going, maybe that's the reason that we need to look at something like that to begin with. And all of that roots back down to, if they can have a meeting with you twice a week, they're going to
Yes.
opt for that,
Oh
because
yeah.
then you are accountable to telling them what to do. And when they come in, they're distracted by their next crisis. They tell you about this. They walk out with a game plan. 30 minutes later, real life hits. They don't do any of the stuff and they stay stuck in a cycle, but they're
Mhm.
going to sessions. So they're doing it.
Right. So they're
And
doing
then the
work.
problem is you,
Yeah.
not them.
Oh
And
yeah.
that part right there is like, not every program is helpful, but oftentimes the not investing in the program is your own avoidance, not actually that it's better for you to have those one on ones all the time.
Right. Oh my gosh. No, I see that with our in-person personal training clients.
Mm,
Oh, yeah. Just just like you totally described them.
yeah.
Yeah, because it's if they're not making progress, it is our fault.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's easier because
Yeah.
that's a shame defense strategy. And again,
Right.
I have empathy for that. I
Yes,
still
absolutely.
do that when I feel like I'm failing. My go to is to figure out, how did my husband somehow fuck up? Because I can't be the worst mom in the world every day. And my shame wants to go there. I've,
Right.
worked through my body shame. I've worked through my partner shame. I've worked through these other pieces. So now that's the voice I'm working through. And when I start to get like that, my go to mechanism is, how is it somebody else's fault? Because it helps me feel like I'm less on the bottom by myself. I can never do this. I get it.
Mhm.
It's also recognizing that unless we deal with that, no matter how many, I mean, my mom was doing that with personal training. She would go see a personal trainer for years. And I tell you
Mhm.
what,
Yeah.
she still can't go into the gym by herself and know what to do, because she just would
Yeah,
rely on them instead of go,
exactly.
how do I? And that's, I'm assuming your goal too. When I'm with somebody, I'm like, your goal is to get rid of me.
Right.
Your
Yes,
goal is to
exactly.
not need me around. I'm not your friend. That's
Right.
not my job.
No.
And so how do we get to that place? But it is that. And it's also getting
Mhm.
people to a place where they trust they don't need us.
Mhm.
They need themselves, and they need
Right.
connection from other people and places that aren't paying a professional to
Right.
then rely on them for security, stability, and ultimately connection. And it's not
Right.
the type of connection we're supposed to provide. It's the type
No.
of connection they need from other people.
Right. Right. Exactly. And that is, you're right. People seem to get stuck in that space.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I do want to acknowledge that when you are working on things, when you said you're at the bottom and you're working on yourself and that's hard, it is hard.
Yeah.
And even though it's hard, it doesn't mean that it's wrong.
Yes.
I think very early in our conversation, you talked about adaption, and there is positive adaption and there is negative adaption. And when you're in the bottom, you are working on moving through a positive adaptation, whereas the shame is a negative adaptation.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, I talk about this with my 5.5-year-old all the time.
Mhm.
Just because it's new doesn't make it bad. It's
Right.
different. And it's
Yes.
uncomfortable to do
Right.
something different, you know? And
Right.
in her case, it might be something like going to a new camp or meeting new friends. In our case, it's feeling our feeling and not going to
Hmm.
food to solve
Yeah.
it.
Right.
It's getting rid of the scale and learning to live with the anxiety around not knowing and trusting that you can develop the skill set to take care of and nurture your body without needing something 5 times a day to tell you whether or not you're doing a good job. You know, it's all these little pieces. It's trusting that you can go do a workout at the gym and you've learned how to do this. You can move
Hmm.
your body. You can trust your body and you can be uncomfortable without it meaning that you're doing something wrong. And I think that I don't like that good and bad, but I think a lot of
Yeah.
people, it's understanding the difference between good pain or adaptive pain. I like that word
Mhm.
much better versus that bad pain or that maladaptive pain. And
Mhm.
sometimes, like with a muscle group, there might be an injury and you really need to rest it. That is the type of pain signaling
Mhm.
something we need to take a break. You've gone
Right.
too deep. You're out of the therapeutic window of making any change. Most of the pain that we feel, whether it is physical, emotional, mental pain, is not a sign we need to stop. It's a sign maybe we
Mhm.
need to pause and then go deeper. But it is usually something that if we allowed ourselves to move through it, we would see a release rather than
Mhm.
spend our whole life having to run to create more and more and more and more maladaptive patterns
Mhm.
to not come face to face with the thing we've convinced ourselves we can't deal with.
Right. Right. That's so true. And you brought up a really good point that maybe your body is trying to tell you that is something you need to pause. And
Hmm.
because you have to pause, again, it does not make you a failure. In fact, I would much rather that my clients listen to and honor their body when it's asking for rest, when it's asking
Yeah.
for recovery versus trying to force your way through a situation.
Yeah. And that, I mean, I think that's ultimately my whole thing that I talk about is shame resilience, which is
Hmm.
recognizing that shame is going to come into your life forever. Again, it thinks it is being helpful. It is a
Right.
form of fear that is trying to protect you. It's not going anywhere. The goal is to figure out how have we conditioned ourselves to respond to that fear and how can we change that relationship to it. And so if we're looking at that, you're going to need to pause for the rest of your life at different points.
Hmm.
You're going to go through different iterative cycles of feeling really good and really empowered and then really disconnected and unrooted and lacking that feeling of self-control. And that's a normal human experience. The big part of the resilience piece is to learn how to ride some of those waves of distress and those changes and those evolutions. And even those times where you're like, shoot, I'm at a different rock bottom than I thought I was going to be at, and going, what can I do with that? How can I move through that? What did I learn? Instead of you're trash, you're garbage, look at this one more time that you failed, you can't do it. Because that story you picked up at a very young age, it didn't serve you then, and it's definitely not serving you now.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. Um, yeah. And I think, it's just coming to a realization that, your body is accumulation of things that have happened through your
Mhm.
life, your choices you've made, whether you made them intentionally, subconsciously, but you're not going to ever have a good relationship with your body and with food if these other things aren't addressed, because it's
Mhm.
never ever as simple as just eat less and move more. Never.
Mhm. And I think the thing I learned in my own eating disorder recovery was so much of the change was around because I remember getting to a point where I never was used movement in an
Hmm.
unhealthy way. It was very much my relationship with food. And it
Yeah.
was, again, learning over time that a lot of that was my way of managing really severe trauma that hadn't been
Yeah.
addressed and all those pieces. But what I learned kind of through recovery, I remember being like, uh, mad, frustrated, unsure. I think a whole slew of things, basically, where it was like, well, so I can never want to try to do something healthy again. I can never want to change my, diet and my food intake. I can never want to be healthy because now it's always going to be disordered. And that's not
Mm.
true. That's
Right.
often, unfortunately, what a lot of people in the eating disorder world will focus on is
Hmm.
now it's always a risk. You can never want to lose weight. You could never want to change these things. That's not true. The key piece in the work is on getting clear on the intention that's driving what we're doing. And so
Mhm.
if your constant storyline is I need to find the program that's going to allow me to lose weight because once I get to this weight, I'm going to be happy and I'm going to feel good and I'm going to be successful and everything's going to be awesome. That is going to keep you program hopping because that
Mhm.
is a moving target. That
Oh
was
yeah.
never those two pieces. There's no actual correlation. There's only shame trying to create a correlation. Instead, going, I don't feel good if I eat ice cream every day
Mhm.
or if I eat takeout 5 days a week. I do feel better when I pay attention to, for me specifically, a macro of protein intake. I
Mhm.
wasn't getting enough protein. I flippin' love fruits and vegetables. I love carbs. I was getting tons of that. I was getting great fats. I wasn't getting enough protein. It's okay that I'm now tracking something specific to get my body what it needs. It doesn't mean, oh my gosh, I'm dieting, I'm restricting, I'm not eating certain things, I'm cutting food out. It's going, oh my gosh, I'm learning
Right.
what feels good in my body. I'm learning as I move why I like to move and what strength
Mhm.
feels like and what empowerment feels like. The difference now being me. I mean, my eating disorder was before my daughter. And so I can't say for certainty how it would have felt like, but I'm assuming me then, because it would feel that way if my friends or anybody else asked me if they said, can we go get ice cream? If I hadn't been restricting prior to going and planning for it, there's no way I could go to the ice cream place and enjoy it. I would be
Right.
fixating on what I was eating and doing, trying to look normal like everybody else around me that's doing this whole ice cream thing. And then I would either end up just binging afterwards or restricting in some way or blaming myself for eating ice cream and having no
Mhm.
self control during the week. Me now can, when my daughter says, can we go get ice cream? I can explain to her why we don't have ice cream every day. Because whether you're 5 or 95, ice cream every day, all the time, probably won't feel super great. If we
Right.
want to go have a big giant bowl of ice cream, though, let's go enjoy it. And I can go do it with the intention feeling so different and the
Mhm.
flexibility of knowing, my digestive system isn't going to like that as much later. I can take
Right.
some enzymes, I can do that. And tomorrow, maybe tomorrow we focus on the other foods and the other fuel that we didn't get by eating the ice cream. Maybe we focus a bit more
Mhm.
on raw fruits and veggies and proteins or whatever that is and teaching that balance. And I think the shift in values driven and intention driven versus shame driven is
Mhm.
ultimately the goal for us. It was never,
Yes.
you can't eat ice cream again or you're going to binge on ice cream every time you have it. It's this thing, or I can't move my body, or I have to move my body 10 hours a day. No, it's how do you create a relationship with these things that really allows you to embody your values and
Mhm.
allows you to feel empowered? And when we shift to that, it doesn't really matter what the scale says. It doesn't really matter what these other pieces are. Again, you can
Mhm.
still want to make those changes, but you see that ultimately how you feel about yourself, how empowered you feel about your ability to listen to your body, take care of your body, that part starts to matter more than the number on the scale and the quick fixes
Mhm.
and the yo-yoing back and forth in between and the program hopping and all of those things that were very shame driven to begin with.
Right. Absolutely. No, I love that. Finding food freedom is like so important and is very core at what we do. I've never, I've been doing this a long time now, and I have never ever seen a woman that had her life drastically improved because she lost X amount of pounds. Like,
Right.
who cares? I mean,
Right.
yeah, maybe you do feel some better about yourself, but it does not fix things. It doesn't give you a better relationship with your family or your
Yep.
spouse. It doesn't improve your job. It doesn't do any of that.
Right. It doesn't help you set better boundaries and stick with
No.
them. It doesn't help you tolerate distress better. And I think that's the piece where there's nothing wrong with if somebody is in a position and they go, you know what? I know my body would feel better if I didn't have this much weight on it, or if I did
Right.
change my food intake.
Right.
Great. There's
Yes.
definitely components to that. But it is, again, coming back to the values and coming back to if the goal is scarcity driven, which
Mhm.
is I can't be worthy and lovable unless I weigh this amount, lose this weight, do these things, that needle's always going to move to something else. Instead,
Mhm.
it's empowerment driven. I want to make these changes that feel sustainable and good to me to live a life I'm excited about. I want to, now that I have a daughter and I see our aging parents and some of the limitations of what they can do physically and what they're able to take on, I want to be, when she's my age, the person she calls and is like, we're hiking Dog Mountain. And I go, fuck yeah, I'll be there in the morning. And I can
Right.
do the whole thing. And I can be capable of moving and taking care of myself. That's my goal. Like, yeah, it's
Right.
cool to hit a PR. It's cool to see changes in your body or like muscle tone. That's cool. Awesome. Whatever.
Right.
But I want that. I want the type of life I'm excited about doing the things that bring me the most joy, which is spending time with those people.
Right.
And then also recognizing how changing your relationship with food in your body, if you do it through the intentional, values driven place, does ripple into changing your relationship with boundary setting, changing your relationship with open communication versus passive aggressive communication, because you can get clear on what you will and won't tolerate, what
Mhm.
you do and don't want. And you can trust that you can bring other people into that and not feel like it's then your job to take care of them, bringing us full circle back to the control wheel,
Yes. Yes.
getting us inside of our circle.
Right. Absolutely. No, I think that's super important. And I love your goal. That's like similar to my goal. Yes, muscles are cool. Yes, it's cool to lift heavy things. But
Yeah.
ultimately I don't want to end up in a home. None of my grandparents, had a great end of life experience. And I don't want that. I don't want
Yeah.
that for me. I don't want that for my kids. So
Yes.
no, healthy and strong and free of as many problems as possible.
Yes. Yes. That's it. That's the goal.
That is the goal. All right. We have talked, I think, a ton about shame and, what's in our control, getting to the root of things. Was there anything that you wanted to add or share today, Kyira, that we didn't have a chance to cover?
No, I think a lot of this is really, listeners, I was talking about my brain pond. And
Mhm.
so the goal when you listen to a conversation like this is to muck up your brain pond. So everything feels kind of slushy and you're like, I don't know how I feel. I feel a little overwhelmed, a little empowered, a little anxious, a little like I want to run away, and also a little like I can do this. That's the goal. That means we're in a place of change happening. And so I think maybe the one piece that I would encourage people to do is either go back and listen to this or just wherever you're at
Mhm.
now, give yourself the gift of only asking yourself to take away one thing, one next right step for you, whatever that 1% is, whatever is kind of standing out to you in this moment. If you re listen to this interview or other podcast episodes a month from now, something else is going to stand out. But for right now, just give yourself permission to pick one thing and anchor on that. Anchor on that 1% and just focus there, because what we just described is the type of work you do in years of work
Oh
and
yeah.
recovery,
Oh yeah.
years of processing. Your goal isn't to listen to this one 45-minute conversation and be like, all right, I'm all set. I got everything I need. It's to
No.
go, oh, I see myself in these stories. What's the next right step for me?
Mhm.
And particularly, what do I need either from myself or the world around me to feel supported in taking that next 1% step and change in the life that I'm leading? So that would be, I think, the way I'd want to end it for everyone is don't try to do all this. Don't try to take it on. Don't be like, I got to get everything inside and outside my circle by tomorrow or I'm failing. That's your shame. The goal, if we're thinking about values driven and intentional living, is just the next piece. The
Mhm.
rest will come when it is meant to. The messages that we're saying, this is nothing new. We're just framing it in one way. You'll come back to it when you're ready for the next part.
Right. Absolutely. Yes. 1%, one small step at a time. So Kyira, you were talking about your your course that you have, which sounds super amazing. Is that available on your website if someone wanted to look at that?
Yes.
Sounds like
So if you go to adversityrising.com, you can check out my program, which is called That Life AR. I'm also doing this really cool thing now where I think for many people, again, if we're looking at kind of price points and our stress and needing to create security in the buy in, it can feel a little overwhelming. And so I actually have it. It's a 5 phase program where I'm now offering phase one in its own bucket that you can
Mm.
try for $9.99. So it's a
Oh,
very like if the worst thing that happened is you spent $10 and it's terrible and you hate it, great. Now you know you didn't invest that much. But the goal of phase one is to get really clear on what are my pain points and problems and why do they bother me? Why is this something I want to work in and really generating buy-in? And then you can
mhm.
know, wow, I like this person's style. I want to go further in the program. You can buy the full program, or you go, now I'm clear on what's coming up for me. I can take this to the other people, the other places, the other support tools, and I can get really clear with them when I walk in the
Mhm.
door on exactly what I'm looking for. So,
Mhm.
regardless of where you go with it, it just kind of helps you really put things into perspective in those next steps.
Oh, well, that is really amazing. And it sounds like a fabulous idea. Um, all right. Well, thank you so much for joining us for conversation today, Kira. I truly appreciate it. I have really, really enjoyed speaking with you. And I want to thank you for all of the value that you shared with our audience today. Thank you.
Thank you. This was awesome.